Yo, what's going on, guys? My name is Mao, and today we are going to be talking about something. And I just want to state now that the background, what's going on in the background, the game that you see going on, does not portray anything. What I'm really saying, it's just for background, really. But right now, we're going to be talking about something I don't think anyone's really touched up on, and that is Fortnite's going to die. Now, I could see all of y'all just like going to y'all's keyboard and just clacking away, keyboard warrior style. Now, listen, I have proof, I guess? It's more of like a theory type thing, and basing it off on a lot of stuff. So, number one, I'm basing it on something I. I'm basing it on other games, really, that kind of, I think, died. So, and I'm gonna touch up on the reason why these games died too. I'm not gonna just touch up like, oh well, I think it's gonna die. Period. No, I'm gonna touch up why I think they died and all that. And it's honestly, it's fairly simple when it happens, because I mean, you can see what the point of decline is for these type of games when they do start to die, and I think it's fairly something that's easy to just kind of glance over for a lot of players and a lot of even developers. So what I'm talking about is whenever a developer focuses too much on a new or just bad type of people, like the people aren't good at the game or anything. And I mean, sure, you can argue it's like, well, it's them trying to look out for the little guys, but I'm sorry to say, guys, it's really not how that works. If you really want to make yourself have like a decent game, you can't look out for the little guys, sadly. And that's just kind of how it is. You can check out in any games I talk about here, and it happens in every single last three. I'm talking about three specific games this time, and you can check it out for these games. It specifically happens each time in these games, and you can see when it kind of messes up. And real quick, I want to say I don't know what I'm doing right now. I should have probably cut that, but too late. But yeah, you could tell that like what happens every single time. Like you can pinpoint whenever they start to decide, yeah, let's start focusing on the newbies. And this game is kind of already past that. And one of the things I'm talking about is Portafort. I'm also talking about, I wouldn't really consider it so much on this part for the noobs. It's just a good, I think this is just a good one. There's actually two good ones, I think, that actually help around all around, but one of them's, actually both of them are pretty noob forward. So one is going to be whenever you aim in and you stand still while crouched. I think it's only when you're crouched. I'm not sure. Sure. No, excuse me. It pulls in the little die and it makes it like, oh, your first shot always hit no matter what. That right there is easily tell. You can tell it's made for the noobs, but it helps in general just for any player, because for the Desert Eagle and the revolver, it helps out a lot. Now the other good one I would also have to say is when you're building and it switches to the next map. I get it, but it's still kind of aimed towards the noobs because they ain't got the brain thought. I don't know what you say for that, to hurry up and switch to new materials that because he ran out in this one and hurry up switch. But it's a good update nonetheless. I'm not trying to hate on anything. It's a good update. It's very worth, and I ain't got too much of a problem with it. I'm not here to talk about those two really all that much more than I am going to talk about Portafort. Now, Portafort is honestly, in my opinion, really dumb. It's like you basically build for the player that can't build because he's not good enough to build in the game, because his brain process isn't fast enough to think, I need her to switch to this, that. And real quick, I want to point out, this little mini shield right here is so messed up, and it's kind of going, it's a theme around a lot of them. You might see it later on. Sorry, I cut myself off there. But basically, people like, I don't think people understand. It's like you can't focus on the noobs and games that are competitive too. You can't say this game is not competitive. It's competitive. When people jump up and joy and rage when they lose on a 1v1 situation or something, it's competitive. And you can't focus too much on the noobs, sadly, because it's either you get good or you don't. It's something that Dark Souls does well, I think, honestly. It's like Dark Souls. If you don't know how to play, too bad for you. Sorry, learn, get good, kid. And that's how it should be. Like, I'm sorry, but that's how it should be. If you're not good enough to play the game, then either learn how to play the game properly or just don't. And I want to go ahead and start touching up on the games I was talking about. So, one of the games, and it's even developed by the same exact people, Paragon. Now you might be just saying, oh, the game's just bad from the start. The game, personally, for me, has a place in my heart. I played the game for 2 years, over 2 years, and they kind of closed it for this game alone. And it's kind of sad that this one game that just got popularity kind of just closed down on another game that I found way better. And there's a couple of reasons. One, they just couldn't get balancing correct. And there's a reason they couldn't get balancing correct. The reason they couldn't get balancing correct is because they're so focused on helping out these new players that don't know how to handle certain situations, like fighting a, like, let's say, if I'm pretty sure no one that watches this is gonna know what I'm talking about, but fighting a Greystone, he's one of the considered OP characters, versus like another character named Quang, which wasn't really considered all that OP. So these two characters fighting, Greystone would win, but there's been multiple occasions where this Quang would win, and that's because the Quang knows how to outsmart, and that's when it actually takes in play, when you know how to outsmart the player. So they've gone through the situation of nerfing people, of nerfing items, of just going through a ton of things and nerfing. They even got to a point where they completely reworked the game. They made it where they made the new map, hoping that this map would change a lot of things. It did honestly nothing. The new players, they were still complaining that they couldn't do anything. They're losing constantly. It's because they're not getting. It's not because this one thing's actually broken. It's because they're just not as good as they should be. Sure, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of times that there's actually been something broken. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, broken, and they fixed it accordingly. But whenever they have to respond to those new players constantly, it ruins them. And there's nothing you can really say that changes that. It's the honest fact of it. That's the fact of almost any game. If you focus too much on a new player that doesn't really know what they're doing with the game, then you're just throwing your kind of game. You're just kind of throwing it away. Because games, I think, especially really competitive ones, are fueled by the pro community, not more or less the lower average community. It's not really filmed. Like, you don't see a lot of players who are like, at the game, get a lot of people to follow him. You see the people who are like, geez, he's really good to follow him. And the people who are doing all this are even talking about a couple of things that Fortnite has done wrong. I mean, nothing substantial, nothing I'm going past some of what they say. But, I mean, you can go back and you'll see they say a couple things that they don't like about what they've done. So I'm specifically making a point to say how I think this is going to ruin Fortnite. So there's Paragon, where there's been multiple situations where, sure, something's been actually broken, but it's usually down to the player that's not good, that complains and ends up losing because they're not good enough or better than the other player. And that's just one of those situations. It's either learn how to play or learn how to build what's going on. And a lot of players don't know how to do that because they don't know how to pay attention to what's good, what's actually strong, and that's how MOBAs work. No matter what you say, that's how MOBAs work. They usually have this one stronger thing in the game at some given point. It's never anything different. It's always this one little item stronger than the rest that's in this class, so you should use this and prioritize this one over any other ones. It's just how it works. So then, whenever you find that out, you kind of just go along with it and you keep using it. And if they nerf it, obviously you get to the point where you change it. Now, I'm gonna step away from Paragon just because it's kind of dead already. People can just say that's why the game died, because it wasn't balanced. Whatever they want to say, anything about it. I'm gonna go ahead and just drop away from it because people can say anything they want about that. Now I'm gonna head over to another game that's actually got tons of love from multiple different communities. Destiny. Now you may be saying, well, Destiny 2 alone was a failure. I wouldn't say Destiny 2 is more of a failure, it's just that the entire series itself has kind of just died down. There's not much in Destiny that's really crazy new. Every time they come up with something, it's like, yeah, I'll play it. But Destiny 2, it's not a bad game, it's just, it's kind of worn out. People kind of got tired of it, but that's not the issue. The issue is Destiny 1. Now, Destiny 1, the most OP thing you could have done back in the day was run a shotgun named Felwinter's Lie and be on a Titan subclass, which had this thing called a shoulder charge, which when you did it, it basically tracked on anyone that's within like a 3-foot meter from you and kind of just instantly killed them. And yes, it's OP, but that's not what got complained about because that's all the noobs are using. And I didn't really complain about it all myself because I used Felwinter's Lie and I was a Titan, not because it was what it was OP, it's because I've always been a Titan from beta, actually. From the, I guess it's beta, it was the closed beta, the first beta that they had, and then I had the second beta, then I also had, I had the alpha, the beta, I had them all, alright? And I've always been a Titan from then and on, and I always liked the Titan, and so when that happened, yeah, of course I used shoulder charge, why wouldn't I? It's just the smarter thing to do. But people didn't complain about that. They complained about auto rifles and different little handguns or something, and they said they were too OP, and that's what Destiny did. They focused on those, and it messed up the game. And it wasn't even all that much either, because whenever it really got bad is whenever they nerfed Gjallarhorn. Now, any Destiny player knows this was the sad day when they announced they're going to nerf the Gjallarhorn. Now, the reason why they were going to nerf it was something actually pretty dumb. It was because of players not getting invited to raid teams because they didn't have the Gjallarhorn. Now let me just say, I didn't have the Gjallarhorn until they mentioned they were going to nerf it. Which means I didn't have the Gjallarhorn for like 2 years of Destiny. But I always got the raids done almost every single week. I always did it. There is like nothing that actually stopped me from doing anything, because it wasn't because I had an official raid team. Most of the time I was switching out members constantly. It wasn't because any of my team members were fairly known to be like really good. It wasn't because all of them had Gjallarhorn. It's because of all you really needed back then too was one Gjallarhorn if you wanted to do it properly and without having to strain your teams too much. And the thing is we had one Gjallarhorn. He was always there, and it wasn't much of an issue. And then people was like, well, there you go, you had a Gjallarhorn on your team. But that's not the thing. I've joined other people's fire team, and no one has ever like said, oh, you don't have Gjallarhorn? Get on my fire team. And that's why they nerfed it. It was because all the noobs that sucked at the game, that couldn't do any of the raids, were complaining they couldn't get into any raid teams because they didn't have Gjallarhorn. But I got into plenty without having Gjallarhorn. It made no sense. So when this all happened, I kind of just was like, oh wow, I can't believe that. And then it was because it was just stupid to me. It was like I never had Gjallarhorn. I don't see how that's even a needful thing. It's like it makes no sense to me personally. But it was whatever. At that point, it was already being done. I made my complaint. I put in an actual vote to like have it not nerfed, but that still didn't work. But all in all, it didn't work. So it like, to me, I don't think it killed the game though. I can't say it killed the game, but that's when you really started to notice that their game started to decrease because they're so focused on these new players who are constantly complaining about stupid things for no reason whatsoever. And let me just say something too. All those new players that complained about the whole situation with Gjallarhorn, they had 20 times harder to like time trying to complete the raid with a friend that had one Gjallarhorn or two Gjallarhorns in their raid team. That's because of that. And I find it so dumb. It's like you just basically nerfed your team. It's like, why? You're complaining for no reason just because you can't get a fire team? It's like you haven't been asking around enough, because trust me, people in Destiny, dude, like they're like, oh well, I need a little bit of help. And then most people in Destiny were like, oh, this right here, this mission right here, yeah, I just really need someone to fill in. Just do this one little part that's really simple. And that's what it was. It was just people who sucked so bad they couldn't get into the game because they weren't good enough to fill in. So when people couldn't fill these roles that were required by their players, it kind of just like, yeah, no, I don't need you on my team, get away from me. And that's what prompted their whole like, oh, well, I don't have Gjallarhorn, that's why I didn't get invited. And it's stupid to me. It's like, that's not why. You didn't get invited because you're not good enough. And then they kind of just like sold Gjallarhorn, then everyone had Gjallarhorn, but it was a nerf Gjallarhorn, so then it's like, well, GG. You played yourself, kids. And then I'm gonna drop this game because Destiny, I can talk about it all day because the nerfs they did. There's tons of nerfs that happened that probably shouldn't have happened, but still did. It's whatever at this point for that game. It's already dead because it's the second version of it. But now I'm gonna talk about Overwatch. Now you may argue Overwatch is not dead. You can argue that it is dead, but Overwatch is dead. And I'm gonna start off with I'm gonna say three characters in this game alone that got nerfed because of this scrub community. Number one, Roadhog. Roadhog was a character that was meant to punish players who were out of position, who weren't supposed to be where they were, but they were there anyways. And that was because he had a grapple ability that was just a little too far, and then he also had a one-shot ability. So what the developers decided to do was completely just destroy the character. They made his range for his hook almost non-existent. Then they made his damage that he shot basically useless. Then he had to go back into another buff, and then he got to get another buff, and it was just dumb because the character is almost unviable until they buffed him like twice. If it takes you 2 buffs because of one nerf, it's insane. That's crazy. It should be a thing. So then I'm gonna drop him because there's so many things I could talk about him alone. What they should have done honestly was just make his hook a little bit shorter, because he was supposed to pull people out of position, not really take them out of from when they're in position, because that's what he did. He pulled them from when they're in position, out of position, and killed them. So now I'm gonna talk about Mercy. Mercy is you know, like that one piece of dog crap that you kind of just ran over with your tire? Yeah, that's Mercy. Yeah, she just kind of got destroyed for community-wise. And it's really sad because she's one of the best healers in the game, just for heals-wise, and they kind of just took that away from her because she's just useless now. She got nerfed like 5 different times. She got like a whole different rework. Like, they completely changed her entire kit. And then people started complaining about Hanzo. Hanzo, for anyone that doesn't know, is a sniper with a bow and arrow. Now, the whole thing with him, though, is that he only has really one good ability, and it's called Scatter Arrow, where he shoots a arrow that scatters into a bunch of different arrows, and it has a one-shot capability, and this one-shot capability is kind of, I wouldn't say it's OP, but it does a lot of damage. And that's really all he has going for him. That's it, really. I'm dead serious. There's nothing else that's going for him. So then you have it's like you have those 3 characters, right? They've been nerfed because of the community, and to me the game just does not feel right at all. So now I want to go back to this game real quick and why I think that it's kind of just gonna die. I think it's gonna die because of the factor that it's not really focusing on what they should be focusing on. They're focusing on the noob community. They're focusing on trying to help out the scrubs that don't know what they're doing anymore, while at the same time they're making other people just way too strong. And that's just kind of how it is. You can't just like, because when they make these characters or make items that are just way stronger than anything else, it doesn't help out anything but the noobs. It's gonna make it worse for the pro players, which kind of lead these communities. So I think whenever this game starts focusing more and more on the noobs, then it starts focusing on its pro players, it's gonna die out, because the main factor is that the pro players kind of run the community for this game. They kind of do. You go on YouTube and most things you see by Fortnite are by 2 YouTubers of Muzulk, actually 3, Muzulk, Ninja, and Ali. Those are the 3 biggest ones, and they're pro players. I'm just saying, guys, I think that this game's going to die out within a year or 2, and I think it's really going to hit Epic Games really hard, because I don't think they're going to have anything to lay back on. But if you like this episode, subscribe. And also, if you agree with me, hit like button. If you don't, hit the dislike. Means I'm out. Peace.